There's a version of love that looks like jumping in front of everything so that your child never has to feel it. And there's a version of love that learns to hang back, to ask what they need instead of deciding, to trust that the feeling won't break them. Most of us were never shown the second one, so we defaulted to the first one, and we called it love, because it was. It is also something we inherited, and today's guests are two people who figured out the difference. Welcome to The Fan in the Window, interrupting what we inherit. I'm Tressa Bell, registered nurse, former forensic nurse, author, speaker, and someone who has spent years learning the hard way that the patterns that we grew up inside don't stay in the past. They travel. They show up in the people we love, in the way we fight, and the way we forgive, and what we hand to our children without ever meaning to. This is season 2. And this season, we are going into relationships, the partnership, the parenting, the friendships, and asking what we brought into each one long before we understood where it came from. Today, I'm sitting down with two people who are not just teaching this work, they are living it. Lavinia Brown and Andrew Lynn are trauma-informed coaches, partners in life and in work, and parents of 3. Together, they host the podcast Becoming Untriggered, a show in the top 5% globally. What drew me to this conversation is that Lavinia and Andrew don't just talk about this work. They do it inside their own relationship, with their own history, in front of 3 children who are watching everything. This is the conversation I've been waiting to have. Before we get started, a quick note. This podcast is not therapy, medical advice, or psychological treatment. I am not your therapist. Content shared by my guest reflects their own expertise and lived experience. This episode discusses inherited trauma, family patterns, and the emotional impact of childhood wounds on adult relationships. Please listen at your own pace. In the U.S., you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Free, confidential, and available 24 hours a day. International resources are available at findahelpline.com. You do not have to navigate this alone. Lavinia, Andrew, thank you so much for being here today. I've been looking forward to this conversation since you said yes. Let me introduce you a little bit first so my listeners know a little bit about you. Lavinia is a trauma-informed psychodynamic coach who supports mothers in becoming the conscious parents and connected partners they want to be through healing their inner child. She holds a master's from Oxford University, is a certified clinical trauma specialist through the Arizona Trauma Institute, and has additional training in trauma, attachment, eating disorders, and parenting traumatized children. Andrew is also a trauma-informed coach and Lavinia's partner in both life and work. Together, they are parents of 3 and co-host the podcast Becoming Untriggered, a show in the top 5% globally, helping parents understand how childhood wounds show up in their adult lives. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
I talk to a lot of coaches who work alongside their partners professionally. What's rare, though, is that you guys are actually doing the deep exposing version of the work, working together, not just teaching it side by side. So I think that makes you a very unique and interesting couple to talk to. What I'd love to hear in your own words is how the two of you ended up doing this work together as a couple. Like, what was your path in?
Maybe we need to go backwards a little bit before we talk about how we got into it. I mean,
Okay.
I try and share a little bit examples of how unawake we were before
I
we
love
did this
that.
work. Because we also do a bit of couples work, and sometimes, often actually, because I guess we attract a lot of the same dynamic as us. Often the woman's quite volatile. The man's going, "You're psychotic. What's wrong with you?" She's like going, "Why is he like getting so triggered by my feelings?" And I was like, no, this was us. We really get it. I was off the scale volatile. Just thinking if I should share this in public. I'll do it. I've hit people. I've punched an ex-boyfriend, not Andrew. I've punched someone. I've got out of a moving taxi. I've bitten Andrew. I mean, it was bad. I've thrown plates. That's how out of control I was. So what got us into it, I think, and you can give your own take on that, is when you have children and you realize you're showing up in ways that is just not okay, that you really don't want to. But also before then, I had never felt actually that I wanted to change for anyone else. I've always been volatile. I've always had a lot of conflict in my past relationships, and I always thought I was right. I was always on my high horse. If we had conflict, I was like, well, screw you. I'm off. You know, if you want to make up, you've got to come to me because I'm right. And Andrew, I'm making myself sound horrendous. Andrew was the only person, and I actually really noticed this in myself. I was like, I wanted to say sorry. I wanted to say whatever it was that would repair. And that's so anathema to my childhood. In my childhood growing up, there was always conflict. Everyone shouting, being mean, name calling, spanking, violence. No one ever said sorry. No one ever put in the repair. No one ever acknowledged that it even happened. Like, you'd wake up in the morning and everyone was normal. I'd be like, what? So I was obviously just, embodying the patterns that I'd learned. But for the first time, and it was such an eye-opening thing to realize, oh, I actually want to say sorry. However ridiculously painful that feels inside, I want to. So that's, I think, what brought us closer. And then once we'd established that bond, despite the conflict, and we had children, we realized we didn't want to be the way we were with our children. So that's, I think, my side of it. Can't you?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, Lavinia and I we met 18 years ago. We very quickly kind of settled down despite all this, the trauma bond that was present in the relationship, and had children fairly early. I got to a stage where I was in my early 30s and feeling disconnected, feeling lost, not being present at home, not feeling a deep enough connection with Lavinia. And I went to get help at the doctors here in the UK, and they did the usual stuff, which is kind of after 10 minutes, diagnose me with depression and kind of set me on my way with a prescription for some antidepressants and a recommendation for therapy. And I thought that's not particularly the route that I want to go down. And that was the start of my inner work journey, which I think is an important point. I think if you're going to teach other people how to do this work, you've got to have been through the process yourself. So when I had kids, like a lot of my clients, all this stuff comes up. Kids really are a mirror. Relationships are a mirror. All of this stuff just comes and you're faced with it. And that kind of sparked a 5-year journey, I guess, where we traveled the world. We did a lot of this healing work ourselves, and then started individually working with people. And I guess to answer your question, I was working with men, Lavinia was working with women, and just like us in relationship as a couple, we needed to do the work ourselves individually to evolve our relationship and evolve within the relationship. And that's why we work together a lot, because there's not really any point in one person doing the work in relationship if you want to grow together. So that's why we now work together closely, and we work with quite a few couples, or Lavinia sends the dads to me, her clients, and likewise I send the mums to her.
I sometimes liken it to an onion. Bit of a cliche, peeling back the layers, whatever. But when you're with someone that is right, there's both this need to kind of argue and enter into conflicts. Is through the conflict that you do peel back these layers of stories about who you are and these identities that you felt safe presenting yourself through for years. So it's this weird mix of feeling safe enough, because there's something, I guess, energetic that you're picking up on, or at least I'm speaking for myself. I felt safe enough to do that, but at the same, and that then led to this conflict, because the safety was asking me to reveal more of myself and to connect to deeper levels of Andrew. And that brought up the conflict as we literally wrenched these layers away. So the first year that we were together was pretty horrendous. It was, we always joke that we never had a honeymoon period. It was literally World War III for about a year. And then it all kind of died away, actually. So it's like we front loaded our conflict in order to get to that place where we were connecting on a much deeper level. So it was kind of weird, interesting.
That idea of front loading the conflict, like working through the hard stuff early so that you could get to something deeper, I think that takes a level of commitment that most people don't have. And it makes me wonder what each of you brought into that first year of your relationship. So I'd like to ask you both something a little more personal. What is something you've had to each unlearn from your own parents that you're actively unteaching yourselves now in real time inside your relationship?
Wow. How
Good
long
question.
have you got?
I mean, I'll go first. I think I had quite probably a less explosively traumatic childhood experience than Lavinia, but quite a common one. So my parents divorced when I was 5. My dad left. So my dad was kind of emotionally absent, you could say, and physically absent. My mum was very loving, so there was quite a lot of love and safety, but also within that, just that family lineage, they weren't amazing at speaking truth or handling conflict. So a lot of it was swept under the carpet, as it was. So for me, I think there's a couple of things from both sides of my parents. One is about being as present and connected as I can be in relationship and with my children. And the other one is about standing up and having those difficult conversations that aren't always easy. Maybe Lavinia can step in and answer the question as well.
Yeah, what am I trying to unlearn? My parents, and I say this to all my clients, and this is where you get to at the end of my work, accepting your parents for who they are as the flawed, limited human beings that they showed up in. So my parents were not emotionally mature. They had a lot of their own trauma that they had not processed 1 ounce. And unfortunately, that spilled over onto me. My mother, I obviously didn't realize any of this at the time because, you know, you grow up in a house, you think everything's normal. I thought my mum was normal, my dad was normal. It's only when you do this work, really, or when you get old enough to be able to process it that you realize, hold on, maybe that was a bit toxic. Maybe that wasn't that kind. So I didn't know at the time, but looking back, I realized, or I was told my mum was very jealous of me. She, you know, being the other female in the home, she was quite cruel. They just didn't have the tools. My dad was violent. He was an alcoholic, extremely high achieving. There was a lot of emphasis placed on academic prowess, musical prowess. It was about, you know, all the kind of behaving well, being well read, knowing what was in the newspaper. I knew how to hold a conversation with an adult when I was very young. You know, I was molded to be this little doll that was a mini adult, basically. So those are the things that I've really tried, obviously, to heal and not to pass on, because I strongly believe that children need to be authentic and put that desire to be themselves over and above that desire to please you, which was absolutely me. So I was a perfectionist. I did become a high achiever. I never felt safe in my body. Looking back now, I realize that I had a lot of fears. So that's something that I try and instill in the children. However, as I'm sure every mother will agree, it's all very well to say that you want authentic children in theory, but when they're being authentic and that authenticity means, no, I won't do that. No, I don't like what you've cooked. No, I don't want to put my clothes away. No, I want more screen time. Whatever it is, then it's actually really triggering. So that's where the work comes in, right? We can decide that we don't like would be what our parents were, but actually implementing it requires that deep inner work that both Andrew and I do to clear the unconscious patterns that are stored in your body. And it's often your body that reacts when your child does something that feels uncomfortable. So, yeah, I've always known I don't want to be the parents I wanted to be, or at least since I became a parent. But it's been a long road to getting to the parent I want to be and actually acting that out.
Mm-hmm. I think most conversations about parenting tends to focus on about how we treat our kids. But I think the bigger picture underneath of that is how they see us and our relationship and what they learn from that. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's not just the role modeling, it's actually energetic. How you feel beyond the facade that you might be putting on is actually what they pick up on just as much as they do your behavior. So I try and work on clearing old feelings, clearing old triggers. I'll give you an example. So my son, very sweet little boy, we have a great connection, and he got into the habit of lying to me. And I was thinking, this is not okay. Why are you lying? You know, what does this mean about me as a mother? Da, da, da. I was thinking about it. And then I thought, well, hold on. He's only lying about some things. And so I thought, okay, what's he lying about? And it was screen time and teeth brushing. And that's where he would lie to me. So I thought, well, what am I bringing to these two areas that is making him want to lie? Because he doesn't lie anywhere else. And I realized that because I was approaching the matter, however I was acting or role modeling, obviously I brush my teeth twice a day and I don't actually indulge in screen time. It's not that big a thing for me. I'm not addicted. So it's not that I was role modeling. I wasn't. But I was approaching his habits towards teeth brushing, terrible, screen time, always wanting more, with this manic, slightly needy kind of urgency. Oh, if you don't do this, like this is my head, if you don't do this, then you're going to get black teeth and you're going to turn into a moron. And I was coming at it with so much emotional, energetic stuff, noise, that he was picking up on that, not on what I was saying, not whether it was reasonable or not on what I was trying to communicate. He was picking up on my anxiety and my need for him to change. And obviously what he must have perceived is my shame, because I was thinking that's gross about the teeth. And how could you just want to stay on a screen all day? So I was judging. In both instances, I was judging. So that's not role modeling so much. That was what I was bringing. When I stopped doing that, when I could let go of my need for him to be a certain way, for me to feel safe, which is how we know the inner child is in charge, it all stopped. He stopped lying. I'm not saying he brushes his teeth every day now, twice a day. I don't think he still does. But at least when I pester him, he tells me the truth. So I think it's often just as much actually about what you're bringing energetically as it is about role modeling. Maybe you can talk about role modeling.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. A lot of the parenting focuses on how we treat our children rather than how we show up for our children. And I think children are so sensitive that they pick up on what's going on underlyingly with you, what emotions you're carrying around. And the big one is like, are you actually present? So you can turn up and you can say, yeah, I'm there at the weekends, I'm there at the evenings, I see a lot of my kids, but that doesn't mean anything if you're not present, if you're not connected to them, if you're not embodied. All of these types of things. And that is how you show up. Do you love yourself unconditionally? Are you embodied and present in that moment? And if you can turn up with your children in that state, then that ticks a lot of their boxes. That ticks their box for safety. That ticks their box for attention because you're actually present with them. Then you can be affectionate. You can show them love. You can show them love if you love yourself. So a lot of it is how you turn up as a parent rather than what you do. I don't think parenting is about tactics. You know, it's about how we show up energetically and with how we feel about ourselves and how we show up energetic.
I sure wish I had that insight when I was raising my children. I was a little late to the game myself, but what you're saying really resonates. And I'm smiling and nodding my head as you're telling these stories because there are many of the same issues that I've had in raising my children. What do your kids see now in you that you wish someone had shown you when you were their age?
Oh,
A great question. I don't know. You'd have to ask them. What I see in my kids is, I'll give you an example. They're all, over the last few months, have all performed on a stage, whether it be acting or singing, and expressed themselves almost fearlessly in front of other people.
consciously.
Fiercely and fearlessly. And I think rather than how they behave or what they do or what they achieve, I think the fact that we've managed to give them enough confidence and safety to know that they've found their voice and that they can use their voice is something that, knowing myself at that age and what I've been through and how many characters I've been playing and how I hid myself for so many years and how I was afraid to be myself. I think that's the biggest reflection of the work that we've done. Or that's the way I see the biggest kind of reflection of the work that we've done. If we've had any impact in that at all, but that makes me very happy to see them do that.
And from my side, I guess I know that with my children, we can talk through anything if we have to. I didn't have that. That wasn't even a possibility. It wasn't even, didn't even exist in my childhood. I was scared of my father for sure. And I knew there was no space for me with my mother. It was all about her feelings and me being there for her. I was I was very much a parentified child. So I would have loved, I think, and you never know, do you? This is the thing about trying to heal what your parents didn't do for you and showing up in that way for your children. You don't even know if that's right for them. And you've got 4 children, so you know this even more than we do. We've got 3. Actually, you have to get to know each child, and each child has different needs. So yes, I am there for them, and they know that they can talk anything through, and even conflict. I encourage them to say to me, that's not okay. You can't talk, you can't call me that, or you can't say that, because I want to kind of be corrected when I've said something that I shouldn't have done. And yet I've got one child that's very emotionally open and two that are less so. So that approach doesn't necessarily meet their needs because they don't necessarily want to talk things out. And so I think being who you needed at that age, but also recognizing that you're not your children. Your children have their own set of needs, and being able to flex, which I absolutely didn't. I feel really stupid saying that when our second was born, I couldn't believe that babies were different. It was such a shock to me. I felt quite confident because we'd had one who was the eldest was really good, easy. I mean, she had a lot of kind of reflux and all of that. But we managed. It was fine. She was quite an easy baby. Second one was different. And I was like, what? I literally didn't get that a baby, that tiny infant, could have a temperament. So I think that was my biggest lesson in like, oh, okay. I'm bringing into the world different beings. They're not the same. So really kind of having to learn, okay, I need to change. I need to be aware here. This isn't just something that you press a button and copy and paste. So that was a big lesson for me.
I really love that example that you just gave. What would you say that really good repair looks like in your home after rupture? Maybe you both have to come back and fix it, whether it's with each other or your children.
I'd say Andrew's still learning repair. I don't know if you agree with me on that with the children. Because that's, I think this is often the case with parenting couples. The woman learns the stuff, the theory. I didn't know about repair, but I learned about it and then I wanted to apply it. And I do think that men don't naturally think that they need to or that it's necessary. So I think I do a good job of repair. But with the children, like I said, they're different. The repair looks different. If they want to talk, then we're there to talk. Sometimes it's not about talking. It's about keeping it as short as possible, not going into the feelings too much, because that can also be quite burdensome, I think, to children who aren't psychologically evolved enough to go through it. And I know that I used to do this, and a lot of my clients do this, is use the repair as a chance to kind of therapize what happened when you did the thing that you're trying to repair. And that's not really the scenario where you want to do that. That's not for your children to sit and listen to. I had to kind of learn that in a way, the shorter the better, you know? And then with Andrew, again, you might disagree. I think Andrew is a bit of a typical man. You go into your cave, and I might go into my cave and be a bit frosty for a bit, but I think that I say, can we talk about this? Because I hate it being frosty. I really hate it. I hate not feeling our connection. It's very like embodied for me. So when I feel it's not there, I normally say, can we talk about this? And we usually talk about it, and then it's fine. There's always a little bit of a disconnection between the conflict and the repair.
Good.
In terms of repair, I do agree with Lavinia in terms of our conflict. And we see this with a lot of couples, like she said. And I think it's to do with, I don't really know the terminology, but it's like attachment styles. And you tend to find this in conflict, like one person tends to be more avoidant, one person tends to be more anxious. So one person will go towards the other one, and that will cause the other person to flee or to avoid. And they're definitely our default mechanism. So if there is conflict with us, which doesn't happen very often, but if there is, I will tend to go into my cave, like she says, for want of a better word, and think about it. And then Lavinia, and maybe it's just because I know you're going to come and want it resolved, that happens. But that's definitely the pattern with us. We don't tend to sit in conflict for very long. We're kind of aligned in our big picture stuff, but obviously there's conflict, and that gets resolved pretty quickly. In terms of with the kids, they're all different. My relationship with all of them is different. So, and Lavinia does tell me sometimes you need to do a bit of repair, and that's fine. I can take that on board. But the way I repair with each child is different. So it may be going and sitting on the bed and talking to one of them. One of our children isn't much of a talker, but she does like physical contact. So she might ask me to go and give her a massage before she goes to sleep. And then another one just likes contact and attention and presence. So again, I'll go and play with them. So it's kind of different for each child. And like Lavinia said earlier, it is about knowing that child and knowing what makes them feel safe, knowing what rebuilds that bridge of connection if it does get a bit strained.
Lavinia, in your own bio, you talk about mothers stopping feeling ashamed, anxious, guilty, and angry, and being able to show up as the woman they actually want to be. What is the thing you see most often in the mothers you work with that they cannot yet see in themselves?
Great question. And I've been looking into this actually this week with this really interesting thing, which I'll tell you about in a minute. Shame. Shame. It's so pervasive. It's insidious. It's almost invisible. People feel it's who they are. They have a very, very self-critical voice in their head that they believe is them. They feel they are worthless. They feel they're a failure. They feel they're broken. They feel they're toxic. Shame is just the worst. So shame, sometimes if I feel like I have to summarize the process that I take people on in one sentence, it's from shame and self-loathing to acceptance and self-love. In a nutshell, you know, the inner child is one way to access that process, but that's what we're doing. We're helping people not feel ashamed. And where does that shame come from? Parents. And it's, you know, I don't want to bash parents. I think most parents try their best. And I don't think the parents that my clients have necessarily had bad intent, but they weren't emotionally literate. They didn't know how to show up. They were carrying their own trauma. And so the way that my clients felt was not enough, too much, too little, whatever that label is that they were given. I was given selfish, cold, can't remember another two, indulgent, something like that. We all get these labels, and these labels, when you're given them at a young age, lead to shame. So shame, to answer your question. And then I came across this really cool thing, which I can't believe I've never come across before, but it's a chart. I think I'm right when I say it's David Hawkins. I think it's David Hawkins. Anyway, it's a chart that maps the energetic frequency of every emotion. And it's kind of like a rainbow colored chart. And at the very bottom, with the very lowest frequency, and that's 20, and I'm not even going to pretend if I know 20 what. I don't know, but I know it's 20 something. Shame is right at the bottom, along with guilt is one higher. At the very top, obviously got an alignment, but underneath it, you've got love, peace. So, it's interesting. Not only are we working on an emotional level, but it's also an energetic level. And the way I found out about this energetic chart is that I always get my facts wrong when I remember them, but it was something like, and I know this anyway, that perpetrators of crime don't necessarily go for a gender or a race or anything specifically obvious to the eye. Perpetrators like rapists or often violent victims, they're going to steal off you or whatever. They pick up, just as we all do, on an energetic imprint that you're giving off. And if you are carrying around shame and guilt, you are going to be easier to target. So unfortunately, it's self-perpetuating, which is even more reason why we have to release this stuff, because it's not only toxic for you, but it's going to attract shit. It's going to attract people that want to take advantage of you, that's a long answer to your question.
I love that. I'm actually going to have to look into that.
Yeah.
Andrew, I'm curious about the flip side of that. What is the thing men most resist acknowledging about their own childhood when you are coaching them?
Yeah, there is a lot of resistance for men, actually. And it's interesting because I work with a lot of, I guess you would call them high functioning men. And a lot of people have a similar childhood, and it depends how you process the emotions. Some people attach to the emotions, so sadness, fear, rejection, etc. And then they're the people that live a more depressing kind of experience. A lot of the people that I work with kind of succeed despite their childhood experience, and even use it as a kind of motivation and an unconscious driver. A lot of the successful people that I work with are still trying to fill the gaps of their childhood, still trying to get the love and respect and be seen by their fathers in their achievements. So actually, that's quite a challenge when the men come to me, because a lot of them have built stories around their childhood that actually their childhood was great. And, their dad was great and their mum's great. And part of that is in some parts true, because a lot of it is first world problems and developmental trauma. But part of the story, the repression and the stories of a great childhood allows them to move forward and live a functional life, be successful in their careers, be driven, have families, etc. So one of the challenges is kind of unpicking that and saying, okay, you've got your success, you're high functioning, but that doesn't mean there isn't dysfunction, or there wasn't dysfunction in your childhood. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at it, because just because you're successful on the outside, as I was comparatively in my mid-30s, doesn't mean that reflects how you feel on the inside. So a lot of men are walking around, playing characters, having a successful external experience, but really they're feeling disconnected, they're feeling lost, they're feeling anxious, and that all comes from their repressed emotions of their childhood. So that's a part of my process that we have to work through with a lot of people, is that resistance to actually acknowledging and looking at their childhood experiences and how they're still living with them and affecting them today.
That's interesting. I like that take. I've also heard you talk about the phrase attuned leadership in a recent episode of yours, and I do love that term. So it was my understanding that you coined that term to describe what you're both reaching for, like when the two of you actually manage to pull that off in the moment. What does that look like? As in, how are you responding differently?
That's a great question. I would say, and I would blame, inverted commas, being a female on this slightly. I'd say I'm more volatile. Like, I think we started off, your first question was about, we talked about volatile females. I'm more easily triggered, although I'm not anymore. But I think something I notice in me, which I'm working on becoming more attuned about, is when I hear, like, the kids will all come back from school. My son says absolutely nothing. I learn nothing about his day. My middle daughter, again, doesn't really share much, a little bit more. She's sharing more and more. And my eldest daughter shares a lot. So when I hear from either of those two, or any of them, that something's gone wrong, or someone's, like, if it's especially a teacher or a peer or someone that should know better, really, who's done something and I feel it's unfair, I will jump in straight away going, oh, that's not okay. Like, what would you like me to? I jump in and I'm this like tiger mother. I'm here to save you. I'm here to protect you. What can we do? Let me change this. That's not okay. So yeah, you could argue, oh, they don't feel alone. They feel supported. I'm there with them. I'm on their team. 1,000%. I do that bit really well. But what I'm doing is I'm butting in with my feelings, and then it's all about my outrage. So I have said to them before, and they've pointed out, and they've gone, Mama, it's okay. Just let me finish. I'm like, oh, sorry. Because I feel so passionately that I want to defend them. They're my babies. This is not right. Let me get in there. That it becomes about me. So I'm really trying, and I'm much better at, I'm glad to say, leaving them the space to feel their feelings and trying to ask, what do you need from me? Or how can I help? I'm here if you need me, rather than jumping in with my reaction. So I guess you could say responding rather than reacting, which I would say is more attuned. If I'm just jumping in with my reaction, even though it's a helpful one, it's a kind one, it comes from a good place, it's loving, it's not attuned, because it's not necessarily, well, it's not, I know, because they've told me, it's not what they need in that moment. They need that space for them to have the big emotion and for me to back off. So that's where I'm trying to be more of a leader, actually. A leader that hangs back. So not a leader that leads. I'm really good at that. That's why I'm a coach. I'm good at it. But a leader that can, I guess, take their cue from the children, rather than just leading without reason. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And it really resonates, because I think a lot of us moms are like that, right? When our kids are going through something, we want to jump in and fix it. And it really isn't what's best for them. And I love that your kids feel strong enough to be able to tell you that. So I think that's great. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, they're good at telling us what their needs are. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
I think attuned leadership is all about presence, really. So, and like Lavinia said, not projecting yourself onto the situation. So the big word that you're talking about, I think, is listening. So if you're present and embodied in that moment and don't have all these triggers, don't have all these emotions coming up yourself, you're not projecting yourself onto the situation, then you're present and you're listening, then you can react accordingly. You are attuned because you're picking up on the energy of that person, you're picking up on the emotion of that person, you're listening to what they're saying, and therefore you react. It's not from a place of thought necessarily, it's from that intuition, because you're connected with that person on a much deeper level than, number one, triggered, like, oh, I'm that person, I need to solve that situation. Or you're not coming at it from an emotional point of view, you're just holding space with your presence and your safety to enable you to react to that person's needs in that moment. And also, when you're coming from a point of presence, you can look at it from a big picture point of view. So you've got the morals or the values of your family or your business or whatever that are the foundation of what you're trying to achieve. We make a lot of decisions that are hard decisions, but are based on the children's safety and what's best for them. So if you're present and not reacting emotionally, you can take in the information, you can listen, but also you can bring in, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? What do we do? What are the goals here? And whether that's love or safety or whatever, you can then mix that in with your intuition and the energy that that person needs, and then respond from that place.
I love that, especially when we know that when we're triggered, right, our prefrontal cortex kind of goes a little bit offline and you're unable to stay in that moment and really think through things. So I'm assuming that took some practice from you guys.
It did, and we still have these situations. We had a situation with one of our children where she came home with a problem from school, and we do get a bit emotional for a few days and get a bit defensive and get a bit aggressive or whatever. But through communication, we find the right place to respond from and then go back to the school, for example, from this place of what we think is right, what we think our children's needs are, and then we can communicate from that place. So it's not like we're perfect and we always react instantly in that manner, but we've learnt to communicate and take time if you need to, and then communicate at the time where you can do from that point of attuned leadership.
I think ideally you need a bit of space. I mean, I can do this because this is clients, but when I get any email from my clients, especially if it's an update on how they're feeling or whatever it is, I read it, but I never respond before 24 hours. So I read it through and I don't respond, because I know that my response immediately is not going to be my response a day later. And I try and do that with many things, because I'm always more grounded, having digested something a little bit. That's not always possible with children. In children, they need an answer right now, or they're sharing something right now. But it's always trying to come back to that more grounded place, which can only happen, like Andrew said, it's about being present. It can only happen if you've already done the release work. You cannot be present and grounded if you haven't healed your own past. It is impossible. So, just a word, I guess, to any listeners, if they're feeling that it's impossible to be present, that they are reacting, that they are feeling disproportionately to what's happening, it's not their fault. It's not your fault. It's just that you haven't yet taken that time and been guided through a process of releasing old stuff, which is just getting stirred up in the moment. So that's, I think, the essential that we would both agree on. You have to have done the work when you become a parent, or when your children show you that you need to do it. But you have to do it in order to be that grounded leader. You can't lead without it.
And I think that's a perfect segue to my next question, because Lavinia, your signature program is built around healing that inner child, right? And that phrase gets used a lot, sometimes in like an abstract way. But what to you do you think healing that inner child actually looks like in a practical moment when you're working with your clients?
Yeah, it's going back to that shame, right? It's the release of that shame. How do we release that shame? I help them do two main things. Number one, release the feelings. I believe that you can only release old stuck feelings permanently through giving them a target. That's why I work with the mother imprint, the father imprint. That is the legacy of your parents. You can't not have one. Whether you had a mother or not, you would have had a role, some kind of primary caregiver who stepped into that kind of role. So you will have been imprinted by someone. That's there. It needs to be looked at, because it's impossible, however loving and kind and attuned your parents were, that they were exactly the same person as you. They're not. So they can't have been fully attuned. That's just on a basic logical level. So we have to look at the gap between what you needed and what you received. And everyone has a gap. It's whether it's a big one or a small one or a medium one. So I help people release the feelings that are caused by that gap. We target them to someone temporarily, i.e. the mother or the father. And that is a temporary stage that naturally takes you towards acceptance, full acceptance, and love, really, more love, more meaningful, authentic love of your parents. So while it sounds like, oh no, I'm going to make my parent out to be the world's worst parent. No, you are temporarily, so that you can advocate for that part of yourself, but then we get to a more measured place. So you're releasing these feelings by targeting them and by doing them in a relaxed body. How do we do that in a relaxed body? That's through the inner parent. So you're doing release work, getting stuff out, but you're bringing new stuff in. And that's the role of the inner parent for me. That inner parent is essentially, it's the parent you can have a secure attachment with. However insecure your relationship was with your parents, you can create a secure connection with your inner parent, even if she's invisible, made up, whatever. So she is that loving, unconditionally patient, tolerant, kind, nurturing, soothing presence that you never got. So not only are you releasing the pain around what you didn't get, you're also practicing receiving what you didn't get. So it's that two kind of branched approach to your past, using the wounded inner child, the healing inner parent, and then, like I said, the umbrella of the mother imprint, the father imprint. That, in a nutshell, is the kind of structure that I plan my work around. I'm very methodical and I'm very practical. And I believe a lot of the women that work with me want that. I give them actions to do. You tick things off the list. You see the progress. So my work's quite structured and methodical. And I feel that that actually also, if we're looking bigger picture, gives that container that we need. So you're getting that safety on a one-to-one basis, as it were, from the inner parent. But you've also got this safe container of, oh, we're doing the mother imprint, then we're doing the father imprint. It's like you're working through something, which it feels quite safe, I think.
Andrew, would you say you do similar work? Or I think I read somewhere that with men, you do more somatic type work. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a similar outcome, but it's quite a different process, actually. So I've got a 4-step process. The first part is the bit that we talked about earlier, which is self-awareness, getting through the resistance, learning why you feel the way you do, you think the way you do, the reason why you're disconnected, the reason why you live in your head, and matching it up to the experiences of the past. So that's like an educational self-awareness part of the process. Then comes the release. So essentially, I teach men how to be conscious in the present moment and witness all of the emotions from their past. So we don't start with mother or father. We concentrate on the body, and we let the body tell us the story of the trauma of the childhood. Because it could be mother, could be father, could be brother, sister, could be school, could be anything. And the real story of the trauma of childhood is told by the repressed emotions. That's the nature of trauma. If it's not repressed and in your body, then it wasn't traumatic. It just passed through you. So I teach men how to be conscious and listen to their body in order to release the emotions. The emotions of the trauma are always there, and men especially are either repressing them a lot, right? Or they flare up, the box opens and then they attach to them. They're angry at their kids, they're anxious, they're stressed, they're angry at that person, whatever it is. So they're constantly in a state of repression or attachment to the emotion that's constantly in their body. I teach them a third way, which is to be present and conscious and witness the emotions as they release from the body. And during that process, you get to meet the parts of you that are fragmented and still alive because they're holding on to the emotion. That's the inner child, or some people call it shadow, or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. It's still alive. It's still hijacking your experience. So in holding space for the emotions and releasing them, you get to meet the parts of you that are fragmented. And that's when we move into the repair stage. You meet the unmet needs, whatever they may be: safety, love, attention, affection, guidance, inspiration, whatever they are. And then that's the moment that these parts of you start to integrate into yourself. So you come back to the present moment, embodied, safe, with self-love. And then the final stage of my process is, okay, how do we maintain that connection? How do we develop that connection? Connect to your inspiration, your divine guidance, who you really are, and then start implementing that into the world. Start speaking your truth. Stop playing the characters. Start being authentic from that present embodied state. So that's the way I kind of deal with the past, integrate the inner child, and then bring that out into the current reality.
How long would you say it takes either of you to work with a client to get them to a place of self-actualization? I'm sure it varies.
In 2 parts, as in, to get to full wholeness, months, but you get feedback straight away. So weeks, even days, maybe. The release work is so powerful that the minute you start to have more energy, you feel calmer, you feel kinder, you feel more self-loving. So that bit is a feedback loop that happens very, very quickly, straight away. You know, how long is a piece of string? Really, you could work on every aspect of your life. That would take longer. I would say if you're working on every aspect, 6 months. If you're working on just the mother-father imprint, I'd say to do it in a spacious way, 4 months.
Yeah, I think 3 to 6 months is essential because there's lots of integration work that's needed. With my stuff, with my clients, a lot of it is about learning this process. So my goal with them is to teach them how to be present and conscious and release. Now, it doesn't mean they're never going to have to do it again, but I'm giving them the tool to always be able to be embodied and witness what's coming up in their reality and be able to step beside it and let go of it and come back into embodiment. So it's not like you're never going to have to do any work again, but for me, it's about learning the tool and getting rid of most of the baggage that you're carrying around, building the connection with those parts of you, healing that connection. And that can take, that's 3 to 6 months, and everyone's different. Some people really embrace the process and do it every day, and obviously they get a lot more results. Some people don't feel safe enough to do it on their own and only do it with me, and therefore it takes a bit longer.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that. It's all about the removal of this shame and how you go about it. I use many, many tools, as does Andrew. My goal is for them to love themselves. I do it through advocating for that inner child. I get them to advocate for that part that was helpless, powerless, not seen, not heard. And then you gradually give that shame back. You realize, oh, it was never about me. It was never about me. It was about my parents. And yes, they tried their best, but there was a gap between what I needed and what I got. And that's the hard bit. That takes time because, as Andrew said earlier, there's always resistance. I'm fine. I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. My parents tried their best, so I don't even need to look at that. I went to private school. We had a swimming pool. You know, all these kind of reasons why they don't need to look at the stuff. That's the bit that takes the most time, actually. So in a way, the people that are quickest with this, not that it's a race, I think it's actually quite important not to focus on time too much. The people that get the quickest results are those that get over the resistance quicker. So those that are less attached to what a family or a past or parental relationships should look like. They're more able to see what theirs was rather than what they would have liked it to have been.
My last question, I think you may have already kind of answered it, but maybe you can think of something else to add. But I was going to ask, if someone listening is in the middle of this and doing the work and still finding themselves in old patterns with their partners or their kids, what would you want them to know?
Stop.
Yeah, I think Lavinia brought it up earlier, but the main message is that it's not your fault and you're not broken. Like, it almost has to be this way because of your childhood experiences. And actually, it's not even your parents' fault. What you've witnessed in your childhood is just the generational patterns that have been passed down in your family line. And you are just a result of all of that. Your experiences now, your anxiety, your anger, your lack of presence, you're living in your head, whatever it is, you're feeling lost and disconnected. Your body did exactly what it needed to do to survive those experiences. And that's why you're in the state you are now. Like, there's actually nothing wrong with you. You've reacted proportionally to every experience you've ever had. But that's not an excuse to keep on doing that, right? The key is to recognize that and then make the decision that, okay, this stops with me. It's not my fault. It's not my parents' fault. It's a generational thing, but I'm not going to pass it on to my children. You know, I'm here for one reason, and that is to fully express myself and love myself and be authentic and put a stop to this generational trauma that's been passed down the line. And if you can accept those two things, then you're ready for the work.
I love that. That summarizes a lot of what I talk about as well. Were you going to add something, Lavinia?
Yeah, this is going to sound a bit harsh. If you're doing the work and you're still stuck in the same patterns, you're not doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that it's your fault, right? Because this work takes practice and time. Absolutely. But like I said, it only takes months. If you are doing the work and you're still where you are, even 1 year later, what you're doing isn't working. This work, when I say work, it's not talking about it. That's, I think, really, 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 really important for people to know. Talk therapy is not suited to what we are talking about. Attachment trauma, developmental trauma. Trauma with a small t. We're not talking that you were beaten or not fed or tied up with a chain. We're talking about not feeling seen, not feeling heard. It's, again, that gap. I think that's the best analogy I can think of. Everyone has a gap. We're talking about the gap between what you need and what you got. It's no one's fault. If you are still talking about that, then I'd say that talking isn't enough, right? These feelings, as Andrew said, it's all about the body. The body held. The way that you feel when you act in a way that you don't want to, that is indicating that the way that you reacted is based on old stock feelings. These are body held. You have to release them by targeting them towards something, in my opinion, gives them a channel, and you have to do it consciously. You set aside time. You're not just ringing a friend going, I can't believe my mum said this. She's such an idiot. That's not conscious. That's ranting. There's a difference. And you have to do it in a relaxed body. 3 things. Talk therapy doesn't give you that. It doesn't do the somatic work. It doesn't do the emotional release work. And interestingly, those parts on their own that aren't enough either. So you could go to a rage room. You could go to a grief cafe. That's the emotional release bit. You could go and have a Reiki healing. You could have a shaman, past soul retrieval. You could have entity removal. That's the somatic bit. Breath work. That doesn't work on its own either. It has to be an integrated approach. So for those people that feel, oh my God, there must be something wrong with me because I'm still talking to the same therapist after 2 years, it's not you. And it's not the therapist's fault either, but you're not in the right modality. And when you are, I promise you, it takes months, not years. So, it's about finding obviously someone that resonates with you, that you feel comfortable with, but it's got to be this holistic, cognitive, somatic, emotional combination. Otherwise, you're not going to move forward.
Yeah, I love that because in nursing, that's what we talk about a lot is treating the whole person, integrating that work. Well, thank you, Lavinia, Andrew. I don't have any other questions for you. Is there anything else that you feel you want to add to this conversation?
I don't think so.
No, I mean, if I had one word to say to people, it's not your fault. We're all trying our best, right? And there's a very fine line between what Andrew said, acknowledging stuff and taking responsibility for it and just being a victim. It's no one's fault, but we also want to feel enough. And we're all going to be working on ourselves to be better. That's a given. But we also don't want to be beating ourselves up. That doesn't help anyone. So it's finding that place of recognizing where you want to improve, finding the help that can match that need, and then also remembering that you are enough as you are. We're a work in progress and a masterpiece.
Well, I think you guys are doing amazing work. You're an amazing couple. Before I let you go, where can people find you, follow your work, and listen to Becoming Untriggered?
So Becoming Untriggered podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, the usual. My social media handle, so that's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, is at The Inner Child Healing Expert. And my website is my name, so laviniabrown.com.
Yeah, my website is andrewlynn.net. That's probably the best starting place for men that are curious about this work.
I want to thank Lavinia and Andrew for that conversation. What I keep coming back to is something that Andrew said near the end, that your body did exactly what it needed to do to survive these experiences. There is nothing wrong with you. You have reacted proportionally to every experience you've ever had. That is not permission to keep going. It is permission to stop blaming yourself for something that was handed to you before you even had a say in the matter. And then, as Lavinia said, to do the work. You can find Lavinia at laviniabrown.com and on Instagram at The Inner Child Healing Expert. Andrew is at andrewlynn.net. Their podcast, Becoming Untriggered, is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. I will link everything in the show notes. My book, The Fan in the Window, How We Inherit Trauma and How We Interrupt It, is available on Amazon at amazon.com/author/Tressa L. Bell. If this episode resonated, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It takes less than 2 minutes and it helps new listeners find this work. And if you listen on Spotify, a rating there helps too. In Season 2, new episodes drop every 2 weeks. Follow the show wherever you listen and stay connected at thefaninthewindow.com. Thank you for being here. This is The Fan in the Window, interrupting what we inherit. This didn't start with you, but you can interrupt it.